Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We now have reports that parents are being deported, but the Trump administration is keeping their children here. 2018 in America. We do not need legislation. This is a policy, and understand this. This was a policy invented, implemented, and executed by President Donald Trump. And so, in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, we need you. Those children need you. And I'm talking directly to my Republican colleagues. We need you to stand up to President Trump. We need you to join us in telling him that we reject this mean policy. We need you to tell him to abandon this policy. We need you to remind him that this is the United States of America.
He doesn't see it that way. He doesn't see us as being the United States of America or a land of immigrants or anything. And neither does his base, okay? He's doing this for his base. This is why he started his campaign with Mexicans. Mexicans are rapists, they're drug dealers, and also a Muslim ban was thrown in there for good measure. This is why he calls countries shithole countries. His base are a bunch of haters. His base are a bunch of, dead inside, terrified, cowardly little snowflakes that are afraid of toddlers. They're afraid of change. They're afraid. If you live with a Trump supporter, rearrange the living room furniture and watch them freak out. They can't handle change. They can't handle anything. Except for hatred, okay? It's the only comfort zone they have, and they've become just dead inside. And it's really, if Trump was a character on Game of Thrones, he'd be known as the breaker of families. He would be known as Donald J. Trump, first of his name, breaker of families, harasser of children, servant of tyrants, denier of health care, destroyer of norms. It's just, and there is no protocol for reuniting the families after separation, because what Donald Trump hath put asunder, let no one try to rejoin. It's the exact opposite of everything holy and good, right? This man is a dead inside human being. He just, needs constant love from outside. He needs constant adulation. He needs constant reverence. He needs no head to be higher than his. He is a piece of crap. And he doesn't really have the ability to feel empathy. He doesn't have the ability to understand, the world and, what the cause and effect of policies that the United States of America, the most awesome power on the planet, does. He doesn't get it, and really, who's going to win in this? See, this is the thing about his base. They don't think past their noses, okay? Who wins in this? I have no earthly idea. Here you've got the corporate masters being enriched like beyond belief, okay? The wealthy business executives, they got the tax cuts. The businesses themselves, they got the corporate tax rate reduced. They're buying back their own stock. They're getting richer and richer and richer. He's doing away with any regulation that, industry asked him to get away with. Polluting the water, coal slurry in water supply, lead in water supply, appointing, these city managers instead of electing them, and then taking the water from the clean water source, which might have been 2 pennies more, to a dirty water source. And then when the toddlers get lead poisoning, so what? They're animals anyway. This whole idea of everything for profit. These places, these tent cities now, they're all for profit too. I mean, they say they're not for profits, but when you look at their revenue, I mean, I was looking at one of them, the one that's running the Walmart in McAllen, Texas. I mean, $100 to $500 million in revenue, and they claim they're in manufacturing. It's very weird when you start to look up these companies, but what is he offering the working class? What is he offering anybody who backed him? Is he offering you anything? Is he trying to solve your problems? It's a con. The whole thing is a con. You don't win. All this does is make you look at people who are even worse off than you and spit on them. How is that going to help you? You know, we're supposedly at full employment. We got 5 million jobs we can't fill. And the con man doesn't want to invest in anything that would remotely look like, retraining or education or, teaching people how to code, which is a great job for the future, right? And it doesn't take that long to learn how to code. He's trying to appease the base. That's it, nothing more. And everybody knows it, including the former head of the Republican National Committee. I mean, he was on the TV this morning, and they asked him, Michael Steele, they asked him, why is he doing this? And they said, because this is what his base wants. Well, I don't give a damn what his base wants. I care what's right. I care what's moral. I care what doesn't have a negative consequence in the future for our society, for our security, for our well-being, for our future prospects. And this certainly has a downside. You know, the science of what this does to children's brains is scary, okay? It's just scary. There is a Washington Post article. It's in the homework today. It's called What Separation from Parents Does to Children. And then, in quotes, the effect is catastrophic. Their heart rate goes up. Their body releases a flood of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And those stress hormones start killing off the little branches in the brain cells that transmit the messages called dendrites. And the stress over time kills off the neurons. And in especially young children, it wreaks dramatic and long-term damage psychologically and to the actual physical structure of their brains. The effect is catastrophic. This is Charles Nelson, a pediatrics professor at Harvard Medical School. He said there's so much research on this that if people paid attention at all to the science, they would never do this. You have pediatricians and psychologists and health experts vehemently opposing this border crossing policy. We've separated so far 2,000 children from their parents. We have no way to match them back up. So, like, the parents are sped through the asylum process. The parents are sped through whether or not they broke the law. And by the way, just so you're clear, what kind of a law is border jumping? Is it a felony? No. It's a Class B misdemeanor, okay? It's a misdemeanor. And and what is that, the penalty for that? It's 6 months in jail for a Class B misdemeanor maximum, right? And so we're taking away their children, and then we're processing them and deporting them, and they're sitting on these buses saying, I can't leave without my child. Where is my son? And no one knows. You know why? Because DHS is responsible for processing mom and dad. And HHS, which is a completely different agency, Health and Human Services, they're the ones that are taking custody of the children, and they don't talk to each other. They do not talk to each other.
The hundreds that are not included in there, you said 10,000, but for the hundreds that we have seen, perhaps up to 2,000, are there any examples of child abuse, you believe? And how could this not be child abuse for the people who are taken from their parents? Not the ones who are sent here with their parents' blessing with a smuggler, and the people who are taken from their parents.
Unfortunately, I'm not in any position to deal with, hearsay stories. If someone has a specific allegation, as I always do when I testify, I ask that they provide that information to the Department of Homeland Security. We will look into it. Of course, we do not want any situation where a child is not completely adequately taken care of.
You're lying. You're lying. She is the wicked stepmother of 2,000 children, and she is lying because 250,000 doctors in the United States, 7,700 mental health professionals, and 142 organizations have signed a petition to the Trump administration. And in the petition, it says, to pretend that separated children do not grow up with the shrapnel of this traumatic experience embedded in their minds is to disregard everything we know about child development, the brain, and trauma. There is neurological damage from child-parent separation. In our work, we have been reduced to tears. So she says, oh, give us the evidence of any child abuse. There are 250,000 health professionals, 7,700 mental health professionals, and 142 organizations have sent her the scientific research that clearly shows that you are stunting their ability to form a complete brain. The white matter is destroyed. The gray matter is the part that solves problems. The white matter is the part that receives the signals. That's why some kids appear to be catatonic. That's why some kids have gone silent already. Okay? They looked at, okay, I don't know how many of you remember the Romanian orphan disaster. They had a dictator there named Nicholas Ceausescu. He banned birth control. He banned abortions. He insisted that his people have 5 children each. You know, every family have 5 children. He actually imposed a celibacy tax. That's so much for the incels, right? For not creating, if you created less than 5 children, right? Because he thought ratcheting up the birth rate would boost the economy of Romania. And instead, they had to open up these massive state-run orphanages to deal with over 100,000 children whose parents couldn't afford to raise them. What does this have to do with that? Well, what they saw was that when kids, toddlers, babies were separated from their parents, they saw kids rocking uncontrollably, kids hitting themselves, kids hitting their heads against the wall. It was heartbreaking. They had to make up a rule for the researchers who were investigating the effects on separation from parents, and they had to make up a rule that they would never cry in front of the children. Then they followed the children to see what would happen to them as they grew older. And they found very unsettling differences in their brains. The kids who were separated from their parents at a young age had much less white matter, which is made up the fibers that transmit information throughout the brain. And they had much less gray matter, which are the brain cell bodies that process the information that you use to solve problems. So basically what they found was that the activity in children's brains was much lower than expected. He said, if you think of the brain as a light bulb, it's as though there was a dimmer in their brains that reduced them from a 100-watt bulb to a 30-watt bulb. Their fight or flight response was permanently broken. Stressful situations that would prompt physiological responses like an increased heart rate or sweaty palms produced nothing in these kids. They had gone pretty much brain dead to emotion. They felt nothing. And the sick part is the brain can't renew or repair itself like other organs can. And that's why it has such a devastating effect. It is biological. At Boston Medical Center, they did research on from the time a child is born to the time a child is, on their own, walking and more than walking and talking, but on their own, like let's say going to school and stuff like that. Skin to skin contact, especially for newborns, is critical to the newborn's development. This is what we were talking about yesterday with the social worker from Alabama who was kind enough to call us yesterday. And I said to her, do you remember the Erickson experiment where they took a cloth covered monkey and they put a baby monkey in with the cloth covered, and then they took a wire monkey mother and they put a baby monkey in with the wire mother? Well, the cloth covered mother monkey baby developed empathy and was a calm monkey, but the one that was put in with a wire mother went crazy and started beating its head against the cage and was violent and just then finally just went catatonic, because our bodies secrete hormones like oxytocin on contact. And that helps babies attach and connect to you. It is actually physiological, okay? And so a child's sense of what safety means depends on that relationship. And without it, the part of the brain that deals with attachment and fear develop differently. The amygdala and the hippocampus, they develop differently. And so the kids develop PTSD late in life. The neurons start firing irregularly. The part of their brain that sorts things out into safe or dangerous, it doesn't work. Things that are threatening don't seem threatening. Things that aren't threatening seem threatening because their mind is not able to translate these signals properly or transmit these signals properly. And so, therefore, the problem-solving part of the brain, which is also underdeveloped, doesn't even get a signal that a problem is present or that this is not a problem. And so, when these children grow up, they are twice as likely to be arrested or criminally charged as adults. They are 60% more likely to have alcohol abuse problems, more than twice as likely to struggle with gambling and opioid addiction. Left behind children have markedly higher rates of anxiety and depression later in life, increased aggression, withdrawal, and cognitive difficulties. And this is what was submitted to Kirsten Nielsen as being a reason not to do it. And she said she hasn't seen anything that would amount to child abuse. If you take the moral, spiritual, and even political aspect out of it, from a strictly medical, from a strictly scientific point of view, what we as a country are doing to these children is unconscionable, and it will harm us because it'll take a lifetime to undo. Have you ever seen, there's a photo of a little girl, she's Syrian, and she saw people die in front of her, and she just kind of froze in time. You ever see her where she looks like she's screaming, but nothing's coming out? Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing to these kids. And we're choosing to do it because there is nothing in the law that is requiring this to be done. There is nothing. We know this because we went over the Flores settlement. Remember, that happened, in 1997? So in 1997, we had a President Clinton, and then we had a President Bush 2 times. Then we had a President Obama 2 times. And none of them did this, and the law hasn't changed. So you're telling me that they all violated the law and only Trump is enforcing that? That's bullcrap. That's just junk. And that's why you have tens, almost 20 attorneys general writing a letter to Jeff Sessions, to Beauregard, trying to tell him there's nothing in the law that requires this. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.